In fact, I've been around ministry for quite some time, so I'm not looking for a promotion, so I don't have to smooch nobody's rear end to get a promotion. Caesar Richburg is doing an excellent job. I don't say that just because he's my friend. I say that because truth is truth. He's taking less money and less time than has been done by a lot of folk and bringing innovative things to the district. And I appreciate that. I just wanted to say that to him. And now I turn to, well, y'all give him a hand first. Dr. Gordon, we in your hands.
I've been told quite a bit already. Y'all make sure this is not long. So we will do our best, but we want to take our time to discuss what's important to us. And so the topics that we have today, is igniting to make a difference. And then we're talking about relationships, community engagement, church and society, and social justice, and civic involvement. We have an expert panel before you today. First, we have the Reverend Joseph Darby, pastor of Nichols Chapel A.M.E. Church, downtown Charleston. We have the Reverend Eric S.C. Manning, pastor of Mother Emanuel A.M.E. Church in Charleston. We have the Reverend Larry J. Nelson, our pastor of St. Luke A.M.E. Church, Hollywood, and Judge Leroy Lennon, the first vice president of the 70 Episcopal District Lay Organization and a member of New Jerusalem A.M.E. Church on Wadmalaw Island. Before getting started, let me share a few things with you. So please listen very carefully. We will encourage everyone to pay close attention to the conversation that the panel will participate in very shortly. We ask that you do not interrupt them while they're speaking, but at the appropriate time, we will afford you an opportunity to respond with your questions and your comments. Very important, when responding to a question, asking a question, or making a statement, we ask that you would please stand to be recognized, and that you will speak into the microphone, which will be brought to you. You will have 2 minutes. 2 minutes, amen? And we have our timekeeper, please stand, our district YPD director. And when your 2 minutes is up, I think Brother Meg is going to put it on the screen. Please hand over the mic so she can get others involved. And finally, please be respectful of everyone and allow others to dialogue as well by responding once to a question. It is very important that we bring awareness to the criticalness of the moment in our lives as we face the uncertain times. So the truth of the matter is that in all aspects of our lives, it is in fact affected, including the church. So these topics that are being lifted up today touches on all of those things. The hope is, as these topics are explored, that it will challenge us to be proactive in our churches, in our lives, in our community, in our society, as we are made aware of the paradigm shift that we are facing today. Okay, let me start with Reverend Joseph Darby. I will give him the mic, and he will share with you his statements at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. Just a couple of things at this time to hopefully get us started. One of those is to know the nature of ignition, since we're talking about igniting. Ignition means you light something. When you go outside, you hope the ignition in your car works today. Let the church say amen. If you have a fireplace on a cold day, then you ignite a fire. And ignition in the church means that you start a fire, and you start a fire with a purpose, because scripturally there's always a purpose. Moses was ignited to speak up for his people because he saw this bush that had ignited, but it didn't burn up. When Jesus began his ministry, he didn't begin his ministry by saying, I'm here to start a new auxiliary. He talked about in Luke 4 about freeing captives, bringing sight to the blind, setting prisoners free. He talked about igniting a new movement. That new movement was one of the reasons he was killed, because he ran afoul not only of the religious but the political powers that be. In the Apostle Paul, when he did what he did it because he was able to negotiate politically, since he also happened to be a Roman citizen, an advantage that the other apostles didn't have. So ignition means that you light something. We need to light something in our local churches today. And we badly need that, because church is more than coming to church on Sunday, having Holy Ghost aerobics, agreeing that you had a good time, and then going home. Ignition means that you plan and you strategize and you prayerfully consider how the church can reach the community. And we have that need now. I survived the Ronald Reagan era, and those of us who did said there'll never be another president as bad as Reagan. We were wrong. Matter of fact, we were wrong twice. And it's been pointed out that majority of Americans did not vote for Donald Trump. The majority, about 30%, stayed home. Some of whom were too mean-spirited to tell the truth to vote for a black woman. We need now to fix that, and we have to do what some folk in Israel did. If you read about what happened when Solomon passes away, the political adversaries of Solomon go to his son and say, now, your daddy was rough. What are you going to do? And he consults his buddies and goes back and tells them, I'm going to be rougher than my daddy was. And so they say, to your tents, O Israel, which means there's a time for rescue. If we are to be true to what we do, we have to go back to our tents. We have to strategize with local organizations. And we have to make sure that the church is not just a meeting place, but that it's a launching pad for ignition.
Thank you, Dr. Darby. Reverend Nelson.
Yes, Dr. Godden. Let me start with this. I pulled off my youngest son's Facebook page. On his Facebook page, he said, people rather be broke bosses than rich teammates. I'm talking about the community. And as I talk with the community, I'm talking with pastors, cabinet members of the church, and members, that we listen to one another. I remember when Bishop Adams was here, he had a map, and he had all of his church tacked on that map. I would suggest that we got programs now that we can put our members' address in and find out where that community is and what we could do to help that community. Having said that, I've been in the Hollywood community now for about 17 months. And I think when Arthur Gordon took sick, he was one of the four horsemen, the three horsemen and one horse lady of St. Luke. When he took sick on the day that we had Founders Day at Mother Emanuel, it took him 25 minutes to get to St. Francis, closest hospital. When Reverend John Alston had his heart attack on Christmas morning, they revived him, and in the ride to St. Francis, he died. And I've said it to my members that that area need a clinic and an emergency room. I just wanted to throw that out there. For the school, Baptist Hill, we went there and found out that that student population is averaging lower than the standard for most testing. These are the things, as pastors, as cabinet members, as lay members, these are the things that I think will expand our churches and engage our ministry. Thank you so much.
Reverend Manning.
All right, so we have to understand part of igniting is it's an individual response as well, right? A lot of times we want to always say, what does the church need to do? The church is made up of a body of members, and for that we have to work on establishing relationships. I'm going to offer up two acronyms for self. One dealing with personal growth and empowerment perspective. And you have to understand that personal growth and empowerment are about becoming the best versions of ourselves mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. True empowerment doesn't come from an external validation, but from developing inner strength and embracing our God-given power, walking in love, and having an unwavering faith. By embodying these four principles, we cultivate a resilience, confidence, and purpose in our lives. Strength, we have to be about building inner resilience. Empowerment, owning your power. And then L for love, cultivating your self-worth and compassion. And then F for faith, which is believing in the process. A lot of times we have to also then speak to ourselves and encourage ourselves if we are going to realistically ignite ourselves to change and embrace that given day. So one affirmation that I will share with you is, I am strong, I am empowered, I am loved, I walk in faith, I am becoming the best version of myself today. If you do not ignite yourself today, tomorrow may not even come your way. So we have to realistically focus on ourselves in that particular perspective. Another acronym I will share with you is surrendering. S will be surrendering, yielding to God's will. You can't realistically focus on just yourself and saying what is in my corner, what is in my wheelhouse, but you have to also then surrender to God's will to do the work. E would be that example that Christ has given us. L would remember, or would encourage us to remember how important it is to love one another. And then F again, faith, trusting in the promises of God. If we are going to ignite our churches, if we're going to inspire our communities, we have to make sure that we first speak to ourselves, encourage ourselves, learn how to work with each other so that we can then advance the kingdom of God. And when we do such, then our churches, our communities will catch on fire. I did go over a few minutes, my bad. I apologize.
Thank you, Brother Lennon.
Yes, I'm speaking from community engagement, which is so critical. And I have to lay the foundation to where we are now as far as what we're trying to do in the Waterloo community as far as men, and really is geared to that. Many years ago, the Fishers of Men organization, most of them have heard of it, really was organized in New Jerusalem Church on Waterloo. Out of that group, the Fishers of Men, came the free clinic. We had two doctors who came together, saw the need, and as a result, Barry Island Free Medical Clinic is on Johns Island. Most of you who are around knows what that is. These were men. We went around the churches on the island. It was, like I said, ecumenical. We didn't have many black men involved. Went to a lot of churches, some A.M.E. churches, some Baptist churches. And organizing that group, the Fishers of Men, you hear the name, Fishers of Men, to bring men in. By example, by going out, doing the work, calling and speaking. What we did back then, went to the schools. We helped repair houses. We contributed, supported the feeding of the multitude. Since the pandemic, we have not had a meeting since then. Just about 6 months ago, this is important, we saw some men in the Wamala, in my general area, saw the need for us as black men to be more engaged in our community. So that's where the igniting came from. About 8 of us met at the community center and talked about what we need to be about. The schools, the community center, and other agencies or groups that need to be supported. That group has grown to 15 now, as of now, and they're still coming in. By being engaged and see what we are doing, back in about 6 months ago, I think we had what we call Community Fun Day. We saw that as a way of bringing the community together to let them see, and we can tell them about what we're about. Oh, we had a just great crowd. The kids, we had jump castle, horseback riding. We had some of everything. These person who drive the cars, the car show, etc. And the turnout was so great. That we had about 10 guys at that point. Now we're up to 15. We know that it's going to take. The school, we were in the schools, start going to the school twice a month, because that's what the principal asked, it's just twice a month. They had some, the school friars, and those of you, this is engagement, and the principal is so appreciative. Frierson was way down there. We got a new principal, Latrice Smalls, a black lady principal. Now Frierson is up there. She wanted to show some appreciation to the teachers and the staff. We just got started. And the luncheon we supported. Well, this is just the beginning of some involvement where the guys, we told them about it and how they came and supported. So right now, we just continue to meet. Like I say, we got about 15. Again, we're talking about engagement. These from different churches. But we're specifically dealing with the black men because we know they are missing. In fact, now I know my time, but I need to say what I got to say because this is important. That we are having some fundraising because you need finance in order to support. There's so many things that needs to be we can do. We want us to get back in that mindset because we have mission workers coming in doing the work that we should be doing in our community. So engaging these individuals, not necessarily going to church right now, but we see that as an igniting concept. See the work, see what we're doing to draw them. And so that's what we're doing. And we feel, I tell you what, we're so proud. Those of us were so proud of what's happening and the enthusiasm that is going on right now. So again, I thank God, and I thank my pastor for his support, always there, giving us encouragement, etc. So it's just a good thing. We need to be involved. We need to draw members to the church, whether it's whomever. Go out beyond the walls.
Thank you so much.
That's what I've done.
And since
You know what they told me? So that was long-winded when someone told me that. But anyway, I need to do what I had to do. So.
All right, let me do this now. We're going to pay to the clock. I'm going to ask each of you a question, perhaps the same question, and I want you within 2 minutes to answer a question. Unfortunately, we don't have any young representation at the table because that would certainly help us tremendously. We have heard several times since we've been here the word paradigm, a new paradigm. We've heard that. What does that mean when you heard in relation to igniting your ministry? Paradigm, I'm pronouncing paradigm. What does that mean to you? I know that's a word that the young people use. And so we have to be able to understand their language when they talk to us if we want to ignite our ministry. Go ahead, Reverend Nelson.
I think I just said that in what I just presented to you as far as this is how we began because we have not done it and we are speaking to the young folks, to everybody. And getting the more person you have on board, the better it is, because everybody has their particular group they can speak to. So by us being that organization that they are part of, then they can go out and just bring others in, just like they have come and see what we're about. So that's in the new paradigm in my community, because we had not been doing, have not done before. The Fishes of Man was a different, but dealing with specifically the black man, I see that as a new paradigm.
Our paradigm is really our method. We are Methodists, and it means that we need to systematically look, as has already been said, at what problems are, and make sure that social action, community engagement are things that we factor in, just as we begin the year by factoring in budgets, factoring in hopefully plans for evangelism or construction. We need to factor in how we are going to reach our communities, how we're going to advocate for the people in our pews and in our communities.
I like to tell from personal experience. In 2005, I left the Piedmont Conference and came to the Palmetto. And on Friday, I would come into the church community and leave out on Sunday night. And on Saturday, I would get up and walk the community, introduce myself, and try to get people to come to the church. But what I discovered in that was the businesses that were around that area. And the convenience stores were being owned by, we can call them Indian Americans. And it was a convenience store that came open right there where Old Meeting Street would turn on Dorchester. And we were getting ready to do some renovation, and we found this little small bank called Tidelands, 2 branch, one on Sam Rittenberg and one in Mount Pleasant. And it was about $300,000. The branch manager told us that if we would raise $100,000, and he would put people in place. But before it happened, I got moved. And I think that we need to look at other ways that we can bring resources into our church.
Yeah, so for paradigms, I will take right back to what I said before in that first acronym, in the strengths. We have to contend and understand in building relationships that our young society, our young adults, are struggling with mental health. And mental health is something that we do not talk about in the black church. And to be real about it, a lot of times we say, take your burdens to the Lord and leave them. Right. Sometimes you need to have what therapists talk about in dealing with talk therapy, learning how to express how you are feeling. That's why I gave you that whole aspect of affirmations, because sometimes when you look at social media, our kids are getting beaten down, and if they don't get a lot of likes, then they may feel there's something wrong with them. And what we have to do is adjust our paradigm and understanding that if we're going to build and ignite a younger generation, we have to be able to give them the tools that they need so that way they can go and grow. But a lot of times what we will say is, because I didn't have a therapist, or because I didn't do this, you just need to spend more time with Jesus. We have to meet them where they are, encourage them, and then validate that it's okay. And then when we get a little bit older, and I'm joking because I guess I'm the youngest one on this panel at 57, which is really kind of jacked up. But it's interesting because I have 2 adult children, and I've watched them grow. And I guess my daughter will be okay. I mean, both of our children have talked regularly with therapists. There's nothing wrong with it. So if we are going to embrace a new paradigm in building relationships, we have to make sure that we validate our young people and tell them that mental health struggles are real And yes, Jesus can save, Jesus can change, Jesus can do, but you need to talk to somebody who won't carry it back to someone else. Let me pause. I'm going to take a little bit longer because realistically, the other part of that is preachers. Yeah, so cut me off. But preachers able. Okay, fine. Preachers, we need to be able to find people who we can talk to who won't take it back to somebody else, because at that particular time it will destroy a preacher's life. And if we are going to make sure that our preachers are growing, then we have to encourage them to have a paradigm shift and find somebody outside the church to talk about their problems and struggles with. That's that. Oh, now you bring me a mic. What I just said.
I don't have a question, but I do thank you all for your viewpoints regarding community engagement and how we need to look at things and have a different mindset and perspective. And the one thing that came to my mind when they were speaking, when we talk about Ignite, the one thing that has captivated a lot of our youth and younger generations and even the older is the Super Bowl with Kendrick Lamar. The message that was sent through his performance ignited the whole world. And you had individuals from all over watching his performance, thinking and having to go back to look to see what the message was behind the performance. And sometimes we have to go a little bit deeper to see what the message is. And it takes going back over and over. So it's not just about the beat, the rhythm, and the movement, but the message. And I think that it's also important for the older generation and even the younger generation. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want change? How bad do you want to ignite? And sometimes that means stepping aside and also, you know, I know we do now, change our appearance, change our higher thinking and come to the level where individuals can understand you and know that you truly care. And that helps to bring that igniting, that fire, that flame, and go above and beyond. And let them know we're no better. We're no better. We're just coming down to your level to help to bring you up to where we all need to be so that change can take place and happen within all of our communities and within the church. Thank you.
I too don't have a question, but what Reverend Eric Manning was stating about us taking care of our mental health is so important. When we as spiritual leaders are healthy in the way that we deal with our emotions, we are able to expand that into churches, because the reality is every community that we go through, and every church is its own little community. Every community that we do involve ourselves with is not always a healthy community. Amen. And so that plays a lot on your church. Many of you may not know, but I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of South Carolina. I'm a candidate for becoming a state supervisor, where I train other therapists. So my practice is in Goose Creek, and I serve on the 7th Episcopal District Health Ministry, and this has been one thing that I have been bringing up constantly, that we need to develop systems in the church, because I have worked with some of our, you would never know that I do because it's confidential, but I do believe that we need to address the pain that people feel as spiritual leaders, the emotion, and specifically trauma cannot be. Many times we have struggled with trauma. Broke children, broken people, small people grow up to be broken, big people. Often evidence in the churches that we are in. If you need help, Hope is Love Counseling Services. Amen. Hope is Love Counseling Services.
Well, I have a question and a statement. From something that I've noticed is I don't see a way or a lot of resources for people that are dating and people that are married. So my question is, what are your thoughts or feelings about creating a healthy dating space, not just for young people, for middle-aged, older people, because everyone doesn't have a good example of healthy relationships, marriages, how to sustain, how to even carry on when you're dating without thinking you're too churchy to date. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I ain't dating right now. However, I think the church needs to do that. I think we need to go back as a part of assessing community needs. We need to look at the old church. There was a time, we've gotten sophisticated over the years as doors opened and people told us we over. Church used to fulfill a lot of roles. One of those was more of a social role that enabled us to do more in the community as well, that enabled us to know each other well enough to be able to advocate for what is right. Dating is a part of it. There was a time when folk met that special person, they usually met them in church. These days, that sometimes doesn't happen, and depending upon who's in church, you might want to thank your lucky stars it doesn't happen.
All right, so I will say one thing that Team Manning does, right? And I say Team Manning because several years ago I learned how to lead out of my marriage. And you know, if God gave me my wife, then he knew that I would eventually answer the call to ministry. So why would I exclude her in ministry? Ergo, Team Manning. Now, she has gifts and graces that I cannot comprehend because she used to be single. I know she looks young now, and I may have married her while we were in elementary school, but that wasn't the case. So she dated, right? And that's the reality. I dated. So there will be certain things that she would have to share with young adults within our community, Mother Emanuel, who feel openly enough to talk with her about what they're working through. And some of the brothers, you know, I talk with them as well. And I think it's going back to dealing with relationships and creating that safe space for people to have a real conversation about how do I date? How do I keep myself? How do I work through all of these emotions? And yes, beloved, dare I say, don't be scared to talk about sex. In the biblical context. Because realistically speaking, it's happening. If we have single members within our congregation, it's happening. They may not want to tell you, but that's cool. I don't need to know everything. but we have to meet them where they are and, as again, validate and say that it's okay. But then there are certain things that are not okay, right? And then you have to be able to share that. And all this, again, is creating that safe space, building relationships, and not being intimidated by the current culture and the stigma that's out there that we are facing. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. It did answer it. I mainly think about a lot of young people that think that they can't attend church
Yeah,
and date.
yeah.
Because if you're churchy, you don't have a man. Oh, I need the Lord. I don't need to get married, you know. So really, and I mean, I'm just being honest. I mean, I'm sure everybody's heard it, but there are a lot of younger people, especially, that are dating and they look for guidance.
Yes.
And if there's not someone that they can go to or feel comfortable talking to, I mean, I've attended other, churches, and they've had like singles Bible study. They've had single ministry. They've had ministries for married couples. So that's one reason why I kind of brought that up, because there are young people that are seeking guidance. They are, and they want a healthy relationship with God, and they want to get married. They want to walk in the light that they should walk in.
Yeah, you just have to create that space for them, and we'll say, have that real talk. I don't know what's going on. I'm between two. Am I the only one? Oh my goodness, I'm the youngest, and I'm also.
I think I can comment on that, Reverend Manning. I want y'all females to hold your hand up. Just hold your hand up. All females. Married or unmarried. All females hold. All right. Now you can put your hand down. Man, to put your hands up. My dear sister, I think back 3 years ago, it was 5 females to 1 good man. And the study that I read, they were more educated, the females were. And they were not going to lower their standard for a Joe Blow. So you all have more females than there are men, eligible men to get married.
My sister who asked the question, if I were your pastor, then we would be sitting down this week to talk about what you were going to do when we prayerfully put together a single ministry or a young adult ministry. Number one, because the idea in the church does not come from the pastor. And number two, there's no prohibition. If it's not in the discipline, it doesn't mean you can't have it. It means that you simply need to have someone with enthusiasm to make it work. And when you have that, then the church can grow, and grow in men, in male and female numbers.
All right, Tremaine Bowman, Pastor Shiloh. So I kind of have a statement and in some ways a question as well. First is this, that, we're talking about creating spaces for different things, and what I recognize the disconnect between young people in the church, and we're talking about igniting, is the fact that they find no real relevance for what we're preaching and what we're teaching. And as an educator, I understand that if you do not have cognitive dissonance, you will never find a reason to learn something new. And so what we are saying is we're going to create the space, but we're talking to people who don't know they need the space. So, so for me as a pastor, and I know, if you know anything about the ministries I've been a part of, I tend to do things a little differently. That doesn't always mean that it's effective in the A.M.E. church, but the results are the results, and they tend to do well individually. And so what I'm saying is that we have to do a better job of creating that dissonance, because it's easier to catch the fish than it is to clean. And I think that is the disconnect. People don't just want to be caught. Yeah, the music is great. Yeah, the preaching is great, but they also are longing for a cleaning. And that's what we have to preach, and I can key up and I can go all the way up and know all the things. And a lot of times I want, but I stop doing it for real. And I think that's the paradigm shift that we have to get to, that we can meet them where they are, even when we're preaching, even when we can tour in the street. I think that is the disconnect that we have. And this is me as a younger person and a younger preacher, pastor, even though I've been pastoring for about 12 years, on that side. I'm interested, because all of you are older than me, how do you see the disconnect, with my time, disconnect with young people? One thing, do you feel like as older pastors that we are connecting with them and connect with us?
I think what you have to do is be proactive about involving young people in the church. I caused some folks major heartburn at one of the churches I pastored because I put a couple of 18-year-old trustee board, put a 21-year-old on the steward board. And one of the older ladies in the church said, "Real, they too wet behind the ears to do that." And I said, "Well, were your ears ever wet? Were you born, grown, and wise, or did you grow into it?" I think if we use the system that we have, because the A.M.E. Church has a wonderful system, and we grow and nurture young people, that helps. I think we have to have the ability to know that Jesus is not up on this panel and that we are all human beings. If we listen to our young people, conversely, if our young people listen to us, that makes a difference. And I'm seeing that now that Donald Trump is sitting in the White House again. There was a time about 3-4 years ago when Black Voters Matter took a very dim view of the black church. They said that we were passé and no longer relevant. Now I get regular texts from Black Voters Matter wanting me to come out and be a part of what they're doing because they need the church. And so I think when we realize that we need each other, then we're able to reach that. And we respect young people enough to listen to them and admit that all of us used to be young. The church is stronger.
And then we'll wrap it up.
Hello. I am a former minister's wife, and I've been in every conference except 2. And working in these conferences, our focus was on educating young women. As a minister's wife, we taught them what love is all about. It's not about sex. It's about being careful how and what you do in life. And we got permission from parents to actually tell them about the real deal of love. The kids, and we did it in the Edisto district as well, back during the day in Mother Emanuel. We met with these children, the men with the boys, and women with the young women. And we taught them what virginity is, and we'd explain to them the whole biblical detail. Nowadays, the kids don't have, I don't know why they don't do it anymore, but our young people need to be taught. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I think not just the young people need to be taught, but I think older people need to be taught again as well. if we're going to accept a shift in the paradigm.
Well, you're right on my target. What I'd like to say is that we're talking about disconnect and paradigm shifts, but to me, I'll speak personally, is that we begin to think that our young people need to know what we already know. Forget that they didn't come through the path that we came through. They didn't get what we got. So therefore, if we don't show them how to get what we have, then they discount anything you say, because all they know is today. They don't know yesterday. They didn't come to church like when we came to church, and the elders of our time embraced us. They may not have talked about sex, this, that, and the other, but they make you know that you were relevant, that you were cared for, that you were loved. They complimented you, even if you couldn't figure out, why are they complimenting me? It's because they want to embrace you and make sure that you know that you are valued. We don't do that today. We look away, we talk about, we point, we distance. And you want them to be loving and kind and listen. They're not going to listen because you're not saying what reached them. But when we begin to blend and come together to share our knowledge in a way that is, they're going to receive it, then we can become that kind of community within the church that is listening to each other, learning from each other, and continue to share that information to the younger generation that's to come. We need to go back to our Bibles and remember what was told to us, to tell it to every generation, to write it on the doorpost, on the forehead, coming in and going out. Are we doing that? No, we segregate them. These are our children that we brought. They don't know anything about going into the fields. They don't know anything about cutting woods. They don't know anything about pumping water. They don't know anything that they could not get electricity, that they had to light a lamp. So you can't expect them to live in the day that you came and then accept everything that you say. So we teach, they teach, and we learn together. We have to blend the generation, because if we don't, we're going to keep having this separation. No one's listening. We're not listening to them. They're not listening to us, and everybody's doing their own thing. So within the church and within the family, we have to listen to each other, share our knowledge, embrace them in love. We can use any words we want to use, but if we're not doing it, it's not effective.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And as Sister Commodore lists all of those things that we used to do and that they don't have to do anymore. And we must be very careful as we continue to tell them what we used to do, because I did that once. I was speaking to my granddaughter, and I was telling her all the things that we used to have to do that they don't do, and how easy life is for them now compared to us. And she looked me in my eye with a straight face, and she said, did you used to be a slave? She thought that when we talk about work, we were referring to in the past, and that she related to, I was a slave. And so I understood then that they could not relate to that. But let me ask you to do this for me, Reverend. Okay, Sister Kiera will read a question we have from Facebook.
The question is, what is the church going to do to involve the younger generation? There's a lot of talk here, but you need the kids involved in this kind of meeting to hear their voices. And that's coming from Albert CDs on Facebook. The question is, again, what is the church going to do to involve the younger generation? There's a lot of talk here, but you need the kids involved in this kind of meeting to hear their voices.
Thank you. Before you answer that, that was a question that I was going to ask, similar, that you would use as your closing. And I was going to ask, how do we together, as clergy and lay members, embrace this preliminary focus today as an effective, cohesive, inclusive of our young people, igniting ministry through trust and engagement. What are we going to do? How are we going to bring them in?
I'd like to remind my members that the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964. The Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. Do the math and see how long we've been out of bondage. So we're still trying to reorganize, and we've gotten too far ahead where we're losing our younger generation. We didn't have this problem before 64. We didn't have this problem because children went to church. You know, now they tell us, you know, my mother came to the bedroom door and said, get up, y'all going to church. And then sometime when we got old enough, she would say, if y'all can stay out all night partying, y'all can go to church. And I went to a cousin church, you know that. And so she had your mama, Sister Mary Nelson, and others to make sure we didn't go to sleep. And they had permission to slap us.
We need to remind, I was about to say we need to remind our young people, we need to remind ourselves as well. Jesus was not an old man when he went to the cross. He was a young man. Martin King died in his 30s. Richard Allen established the A.M.E. Church as a young man. There has been a place for youth, there's been a creation for youth. Problem is that when we've been around long enough and we get old enough, we get a sense of personal possession in the church. It's mine, and you got to learn it. And you ain't going to finish learning it until I die. When I ran for first vice president of the state NAACP some many years ago now, had one brother say, I march for King. I know what I'm doing. And he said, what do you think about that? I said, I think that's great, but you know, King is dead. You on oxygen. And so maybe there's a need for some younger blood. We need to cultivate our children, just as our parents cultivated us. And when we do that, church will keep moving on.
So I can only say what we do at Mother Emanuel again, and I have encouraged young adults to be visible. So I have several young adults who are on the steward board. Same thing holds true for the trustee board. And you have to be intentional to include young adults and children. A lot of times, unfortunately, what we may do is we walk right past our children and we don't speak to them. As pastors, we need to make sure that we know as many children's names in our congregations that we are serving as possible. And I will say this as well, children can discern if you really care. So you can't be superficial and saying, okay, you know, come talk to me now, then, okay, get out of my way, I gotta go talk to them. No, you have to tell them that they are important. You have to revalidate them. You have to continue to encourage them in school. And if they are not doing well, then do your best to get by to either establish a tutoring ministry or just get by to the school to make sure that they know that they are not alone. And then the other aspect is being real, is there are a lot of churches that have single mothers. How then can we empower or ignite the sons of Allen to stand in the gap in that regard?
Older folk who will talk all kind of smack about the church, about the programs of the church, about the clergy, about the lay people. Young people are sitting and listening. If young people hear you running an institution in the ground, why in the world do they want to go there? You know, they want to go to the club where everybody gets along. So we need this. We need to break some of our bad habits and make sure that we teach our young people the real meaning of Christianity and the real need for the church.
In our church, New Jerusalem, we really are doing everything we can to get our children to come to church school, offer them a ride, pick them up. The parent, some would come, you would have a conversation with them, and they'll tell you. But Sunday morning, about what they're going to do, and they're going to have the children to come, they're going to give us a call. There's intentionality in every aspect. I know our pastor, on every Sunday, he's asking for young folks. They do the announcements just to get them involved. And so we do have young persons on our trustee and steward board. I mean, these are things, but it's just that the parent of these children, so you can only do so much, unfortunately, until we get to them and they see, I think, but a lot of us are doing the best we could to try to get these children back in church. So we just continue to pray and do what we do. We can't give up because that's not an option. Thank you.
Thank you. As we're about to turn this back over to our presiding elder, there was one valuable lesson that I really got unexpectedly today. I'm working on a sermon for tomorrow saying to expect the unexpected. And what I got unexpectedly today, we are focusing in this sanctuary located at 162, Highway 162, 170. Well, we are thinking about this physical location, but we got a question on Facebook. We didn't get to talk about technology like we should have, because technology is really important in the church nowadays. We cannot operate like we did 20 years ago if we expect to ignite our ministries. We can't just keep everything within the church. As much as we would love to have person to person in worship, the reality is, especially since the pandemic, is that folks have found it easier to worship at home. And they're saying their tithes, they're saying their offering, so we can't criticize them for that. We would love to get them back, but we must utilize technology as much as we can in our churches.
Yeah, and Dr. Warren, let me just say that Mother Emmanuel, we have a church app. I mean, we have a church app that you can download from Google Play Store as well as iTunes. And recorded on our church app are all the Bible studies that take place from Noonday Prayer and Bible Study, as well as other key important aspects. And you're absolutely correct. You have to be intentional and meet people where they are. Now, certain times people may not understand, well, why do we have to pay for an app? Well, we pay for an app because we are meeting other people who, of course, have the cell phone technology. They don't have flip phones, and whenever I send out an update, they get a post, and then they go and listen to the Bible study. So yes, you're absolutely correct. Thank you.
Yes, I started back Bible study, tried person to person after the pandemic, and was fortunate if I could get 5 persons to attend. Went back to Zoom, and it's about 30 or more each time. It's still getting the word out. Dr. Richburg, we turn it over to you, sir. Let's give our panelists a hand. Wonderful job.
I want to thank you for your engagement. The underlying objective, and I want to thank you, was igniting, and igniting to make a difference. And how do we do that? No doubt that youth is a critical component of what we're talking about, but kind of uniting to make a difference with church and society. It's kind of like fishing differently, threading the needle a little bit differently. So that we can find, different ways of doing different things. Igniting with church and society. The gentleman that was here earlier, the senator, I shouldn't say, but the senator. But then someone mentioned something about a school. That engagement can be in so many different areas. Community engagement, those opportunities are all around us. Some of them are just out there lying dormant, and we're not touching them, if you follow what I'm trying to say, or taking advantage of them. Civic involvement. All that's igniting, because that's engaging, and that's taking the church beyond the footprint of your church campus, of where we are. I got a call in our close. Sister Wilhelmina, I think many of us know Wilhelmina. She was Bishop James's executive secretary for many years. Her nephew called me, Dwayne, and said, "Hey, Elder Richburg, what the MLK Center is in Columbia, in the Waverly community. Big gym, MLK Center is called gym. He said, hey, we've outgrown the gym in terms of basketball activities. Hey, can we use the gym at Bethel? In terms of engaging. You follow what I'm saying? But not only that, it also has opportunities for evangelizing, making exposure of the church that many people may not know. Everybody doesn't know about Bethel A.M.E. Church in Columbia. Do you follow me? So these are, and I got to call the pastor. You think, I got to call the pastors. I'm going to place that in his lap and let them run with that. But the point is, those opportunities are out there. And that's what we were talking about, igniting to make a difference in all those different areas, which in turn impacts what it is we're doing. But it all starts with relationship. Relationship is critical. Amen. Oh, I'm sorry. Relationship in that, thank you, sir. Relationship in that local church. But nevertheless, this was good. Let's thank our panelists, for their engagement, their experientials, and pulling from their wealth of knowledge. I think that kind of brings us to closure. Oh yeah, thank you. Reverend, what's the name, gave me $20. Can you imagine? John Brown gave me